The council chamber remained frozen in stunned silence. Through the massive viewing ports, the assembled delegates could see the human fleet surrounding the station. Each ship held position with mechanical precision, their weapons ready but not yet firing. It was a display of force, unlike anything the gathered civilizations had expected from the newcomers. High. Chancellor Vexther was the first to break the silence. His voice carried barely controlled fury. "This is an act of war. You have violated the sacred neutrality of this station." Admiral Jiwan Park turned to face him, her expression unchanged. "We have violated nothing. Our ships are in international space. They threaten no one who doesn't threaten us first. Unlike the weapons you brought here, disguised as gifts and cultural displays." "You cannot prove that," Vexther insisted. But his voice lacked confidence. Now Ambassador Hana Choi stepped forward, holding a slim data tablet. "Would you like us to specify which cargo container holds your planet killer device?" "We can give you the exact location. Container 7, Section Delta, 4th level of your diplomatic transport. It's disguised as a cultural artifact called the Sphere of Unity. Very poetic name for a weapon that can crack a planet's crust." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Delegates from civilizations that bordered Vorten space looked at Vexther with new suspicion. The Chancellor's skin shifted through several colors, betraying his emotional state despite his attempts at control. Matriarch Selrotha raised her crystalline hand again, calling for order. "The humans have made serious accusations. They have also demonstrated capabilities we did not expect. I propose we grant them observer status while we investigate these claims." "Observer status?" War Prince Krell stood, his massive form towering over most others present. "They surround us with warships, and you offer them a seat at the table? Would you prefer we treat them as enemies?" Selrotha asked calmly. "Look at their fleet, War Prince. Look at their positioning, their weapon signatures, their power output. If they wanted to attack, we would already be fighting. They are showing restraint. Perhaps we should do the same." After heated debate, the council voted. Humanity would be granted observer status, allowed to remain at the conference, but without voting rights. It was meant as a compromise, a way to save face while acknowledging the humans could not simply be dismissed. Jiwan accepted without argument, which immediately unsettled the more experienced delegates. A species that had just demonstrated overwhelming force should have demanded more. The fact that they accepted so easily meant they had already gotten what they wanted. Behind the closed doors of the Vorten delegation's quarters, Vexther met with his advisors. How did they know? He demanded. How did these primitives penetrate our security? His chief of intelligence had no good answer. Our systems detected no intrusion. There were no unauthorized scans, no breached networks, no intercepted communications. Yet they know everything. In the quarters assigned to the armored hierarchy, War Prince Krell paced like a caged predator. "Gather information on these humans," he ordered his officers. "I want to know how they fight, how they think, what they fear. And I want to know the location of every one of their colony worlds." The Crystalline Dominion's delegation met in conference, and Matriarch Selrotha shared what her people had learned through decades of distant observation. Humanity comes from what we classify as a Class 12 death world. The mortality rate from environmental factors alone would eliminate most spacefaring species before they developed agriculture. Yet humans not only survived, they thrived. "That explains their physical resilience," one of her advisors noted, "but not their technological capabilities or intelligence gathering." "No," Selrotha agreed. "That is something else entirely." Aboard the human flagship Indomitable Will, Engineer Taiyang Nam presented his complete analysis to Admiral Jiwan and her senior staff. The conference room was utilitarian, lacking the ornate decoration favored by older civilizations. Maps and data displays covered every wall. "We've completed our scans of all vessels at the conference," Taiyang reported. "The situation is worse than we initially thought. The Vorton Collective has the planet killer as suspected. The armored hierarchy's honor guard ships are loaded with biological weapons. 17 different strains, all designed to target specific species. And we've identified a third threat." He pulled up new images. "The Selkoth Concordat has infiltrated the station with assassination teams. We've identified 12 operatives posing as support staff. They carry molecular weapons that can bypass standard security screening. Their targets appear to be the leadership of at least 6 different civilizations." Captain Minho Kwan studied the images with professional interest. "The Selkoth weren't on our initial threat assessment. They're a minor power, barely rate mention in galactic politics. Exactly why they're perfect proxies," Hana Choi said. "Someone is using them. The question is who." Counselor Rin Bei, one of the younger members of the diplomatic corps, spoke up hesitantly. "Why would anyone want this conference to fail so badly? Surely a galactic war would hurt everyone?" Jiwan looked at the young woman with something approaching sympathy. "War is profitable for those positioned to take advantage of it. When civilizations are desperate, they make poor decisions. Resources get sold cheaply. Territories get abandoned. Power changes hands. Some species are betting they'll come out ahead. Do we tell the other delegates about the Selkoth?" Minho asked. "Not yet," Hannah decided. "We need more information. Who hired them? Who are their real targets? We expose them too early, we lose our chance to unravel the entire conspiracy." Lieutenant Somin Lee entered the conference room. "Admiral, we've successfully placed surveillance devices throughout the station. Every major delegation's quarters, the main conference hall, and the command center. We're also monitoring all communications in and out of the station." "Good work," Jiwan said. "What about the Selkoth operatives?" "Under constant observation. If any of them makes a move, we'll know immediately." That evening, the conference held a formal dinner. It was meant to be a gesture of diplomacy, of civilized behavior, despite the tensions. The various species mingled carefully, making polite conversation, while their minds worked on strategies and contingencies. Somin moved through the crowd, disguised as a server, her uniform borrowed from the station's catering staff. No one paid attention to her as she refilled drinks and cleared plates. No one noticed the small devices she placed under tables and behind decorative panels. The humans had learned long ago that people rarely noticed those they considered beneath them. Counselor Rin Bei attended the dinner as part of the human delegation. She watched the other species interact, saw the false smiles and carefully neutral expressions. Everyone was performing, playing roles, hiding true intentions. It made her uncomfortable. She had joined the diplomatic corps because she believed in honest communication and peaceful cooperation. This felt like something else entirely. She excused herself from a conversation with a Thalassy trade minister and went looking for fresh air. The station had observation decks with viewing ports that looked out into space. She found one that was empty and stood there, looking at the stars. She didn't notice Matriarch Selratha until the ancient being spoke. "Beautiful, isn't it? The stars. So constant, so peaceful from this distance." Rin turned, startled. "Matriarch, I didn't hear you approach. Few do." Selratha moved to stand beside her at the viewport. "You are troubled, young one." It wasn't a question. Rin hesitated, then decided honesty couldn't hurt. "I expected diplomacy to be about building bridges. This feels more like preparing for war." "The two are often the same thing," Selratha said. "True peace requires understanding the capacity for violence that all species possess. Only then can you make agreements that actually matter." "Is that why you supported letting us stay? Because we showed we could fight?" Partly, the matriarch's crystalline features shifted, an expression Rin couldn't read. But also because I am very, very old, and I have seen what happens when civilizations underestimate newcomers. Your species is remarkable. Dangerous, yes, but also necessary. Necessary for what? Before Selratha could answer, Rin saw movement reflected in the viewport. She turned and saw Admiral Jiwan Park approaching down the corridor. The matriarch gestured for Rin to leave them alone. I left reluctantly, but her curiosity overcame her training. She stopped around a corner where she could watch without being seen. Jiwan and Selratha spoke in voices too low to hear, but Rin could see their faces. She saw Jiwan show the matriarch something on a datapad. She saw the ancient being's expression shift from interest to shock to what looked like fear. From a being who had lived for thousands of years and seen civilizations rise and fall. What could possibly frighten someone like that? Rin returned to her quarters troubled. She filed a report of what she had seen, though she didn't understand its significance. As she prepared for sleep, the station's alarm system suddenly blared to life. An explosion rocked the conference center. Not large enough to destroy the station, but significant enough to kill anyone near the blast site. Emergency systems activated automatically, sealing bulkheads and flooding affected areas with fire-suppressing foam. Rin ran to her window and saw emergency teams mobilizing. She pulled up the station schematic on her datapad and felt her stomach drop. The explosion had occurred in the section housing the Crystalline Dominion delegation, near Matriarch Selratha's quarters. In the command center, Admiral Jiwan Park watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens. Captain Minho Quan stood beside her, receiving constant updates from security teams throughout the station. Casualties? Jiwan asked, her voice steady despite the crisis. Still assessing. The matriarch's quarters were the target, but she wasn't there at the time of detonation. Minor injuries among her staff, nothing fatal. Lucky, someone muttered. No, Hana Choi said, entering the command center. Not luck. Warning. Someone knew we were getting close and decided to accelerate their timeline. Through the station's communication system, an announcement echoed. War Prince Krell's voice, full of righteous fury. This attack bears all the signs of human sabotage. They arrive with weapons. They threaten us with force. And now they attempt murder. I call for their immediate arrest and trial. Jiwan didn't look surprised. He's working with whoever set the bomb, trying to pin it on us, unite the other species against humanity. It might work, Minot observed. We're convenient scapegoats. Unknown quantity, recent arrivals, already demonstrated hostile capabilities. Jiwan smiled, cold and sharp. Then let's show them exactly what hostile capabilities look like. She activated the station-wide communication system. This is Admiral Jiwan Park to all delegates. Stand by for data transmission. Every screen on the station, in every delegation's quarters, in every conference room and corridor, suddenly displayed the same information. Recordings of secret meetings. Encrypted communications, now decrypted. Weapon scans. Detailed invasion plans. Complete proof of conspiracy involving 4 separate civilizations, each planning to use the conference as justification for war, and more importantly, proof that the bomb had been planted by Selkoff operatives working for the Vorten Collective. With War Prince Krell's knowledge and approval, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The evidence displayed across every screen in the Celestial Hall of Accord left no room for doubt. Video recordings showed War Prince Krell meeting with Selkoff operatives 3 weeks before the conference. Financial records traced payments from Vorten accounts to Selkoff assassins. Communication intercepts revealed the entire plot in painful detail. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted accusations at each other. Security forces drew weapons. Centuries of carefully maintained diplomatic protocol collapsed in minutes. This was exactly what the conspirators had wanted, but not like this. Not with their plans exposed for everyone to see. War Prince Krell roared his denial. These are fabrications. Human lies designed to divide us. Are they? Matriarch Selrotha's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She stood at her delegation section, unharmed despite being the bomb's intended target. Because I recognize my own security footage in those recordings. Footage that was encrypted with protocols known only to my people. If humans fabricated this evidence, they would need technology far beyond what we credited them with. High Chancellor Vexther said nothing. His silence was damning. Other delegates noticed and drew their own conclusions. Ambassador Hana Choi stood at the center of the chamber, projecting calm authority despite the chaos around her. You want to know how we obtained this information? How we penetrated your security systems? How we knew about weapons and plots and secret alliances? She paused, letting the questions hang in the air. We did it the same way we infiltrated your homeworld's defense grids. The same way we've had operatives in your shipyards, your government buildings, your military installations. For months, watching, learning, recording everything. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. If humans could penetrate their most secure facilities without detection, what else had they learned? What other secrets did they know? A delegate from the Thalassy Confederation stood. That's impossible. Our security is maintained by artificial intelligence systems designed over centuries. No biological entity can bypass them. Specialist Doyon Park, the human communications expert, spoke from his position near the human delegation. His voice was calm, almost gentle. You assumed we were primitive because our technology looks different from yours. You assumed we were weak because we're new to space. You assumed we were ignorant because we asked to learn from you. He let the words settle before continuing. These were mistakes. Enough of this. War Prince Krell's patience had run out. His massive form moved toward the human delegation with obvious hostile intent. I will not be threatened by newcomers. Guards, seize them. The armored hierarchy soldiers moved to obey. They were the elite of their species, enhanced with the finest combat cybernetics money could buy, trained from birth in the arts of war. 12 of them converged on the human delegation, with weapons drawn. Captain Minho Kwon had been standing at parade rest, appearing relaxed despite the tensions in the room. When the first soldier reached for him, Minho moved. To the enhanced vision of the hierarchy soldiers, the human seemed to teleport. One moment he was standing still, the next he was behind their formation. 3 of their number were on the ground, disarmed, before the others could react. Minho moved through them like water flowing around rocks. He didn't use weapons. He didn't need to. His bare hands struck with precision that spoke of decades of training. Every movement was efficient, wasting no energy. In less than 2 seconds, all 12 elite soldiers were disabled. The captain returned to his position beside Admiral Jiwan, not even breathing hard. Stand down, he said quietly. Please. The chamber was silent. Even War Prince Krell seemed stunned. Dr. Yuna Kim, the xenobiologist, checked her data pad calmly. For reference, Captain Kwon is 42 years old by our standard. He has no cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications, no performance-boosting drugs in his system. What you just witnessed is the result of human training and natural physical capability. Impossible, someone whispered. Improbable, Yuna corrected. But clearly not impossible. Admiral Jiwan stepped forward. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what humanity is and what we're capable of. Commander Hyung-woo Shin, please broadcast from the Indomitable Will. The main display shifted. It showed the bridge of the human flagship, and standing at its center was Commander Shin, a lean man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. This is Commander Shin to all vessels at the conference station. This is your only warning. Stand down your weapon systems and power down your combat systems, or you will discover why humanity doesn't lose wars. You threaten us? A delegate shouted. You're outnumbered 47-1. Are we? Shin asked. Look again. Through the viewing ports, delegates watched as the human fleet transformed. Weapon ports that hadn't been visible before opened along every ship's hull. Power signatures that had been suppressed suddenly flared to full combat readiness. Energy shields that appeared primitive moments ago now showed readings that matched or exceeded the best. Galactic technology dot, and then the real shock came. More ships appeared? Human vessels had been hiding throughout the system, their stealth technology so advanced that even the station's sophisticated sensors hadn't detected them. Dozens of ships materialized from nowhere, surrounding the conference station in a perfect, tactical formation. The delegates realized they weren't looking at a diplomatic mission. They were looking at an invasion force that had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. How many ships do you have out there? Matriarch Selrotha asked, her ancient voice carrying genuine curiosity. Enough, Jiwan replied simply. A Krellix delegate, their species known for advanced sensor technology, frantically checked their instruments. This makes no sense. How did you hide this many vessels? Our sensors should have detected them the moment they entered the system. Doyun spoke again. You assumed our technology was primitive. You saw our ships and thought they were outdated designs. You didn't consider that different doesn't mean inferior. Our stealth technology operates on principles your scientists haven't discovered yet. What principles? The Krellix demanded. The kind we don't share with people who bring planet killers to peace conferences. Hana replied. High Chancellor Vexter finally found his voice. This is an act of war. You cannot simply threaten the gathered powers of the galaxy. Can't we? Jiwan asked. Look around, Chancellor. Your carefully planned conspiracy is exposed. Your allies are revealed. Your weapons are discovered. And you're surrounded by a human fleet that your intelligence services didn't even know existed. I'd say we can do whatever we want at this point. She walked to the center of the chamber, her boots clicking on the polished floor. Every eye followed her. But we don't want war. We never did. We came here to prevent one. By threatening us? War Prince Krell growled from where he stood, though notably he made no move to attack again. By showing you the truth, Jiwan said. You were planning to slaughter each other. Billions would have died. Civilizations would have fallen. And for what? Territory? Resources? Pride? We've read your histories. We know what happens when galactic powers go to war. It nearly destroyed you 3,000 years ago, and it will finish the job this time. She looked at each delegate in turn. We won't allow it. Not because we're noble saviors. Because we're practical survivors. A galactic war will eventually reach our space. The chaos will spill over. Refugee ships will flood our borders. Trade will collapse. Pirates and warlords will thrive in the power vacuum. Our people will suffer because you couldn't control yourselves. So you're forcing peace on us? Another delegate asked. Yes, Hana Choi said without hesitation. That's exactly what we're doing. Matriarch Selrotha rose slowly. The movement drew every eye. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of millennia. I have lived a very long time. I have seen peace and war, rise and fall, hope and despair. And in all my years, I have never witnessed anything quite like this. She looked at the human delegation. You march into our conference hall with evidence of our sins. You threaten us with weapons we didn't know you possessed. You demonstrate capabilities that should be impossible for such a young species. And you do all of this not for conquest or dominion, but to force us to make peace with each other." She paused, her crystalline features reflecting the light in strange patterns. "Are all humans this aggressively altruistic, or are we simply fortunate?" Jiwan actually smiled at that. "We prefer to think of it as enlightened self-interest. Your survival benefits us. Your stability benefits us. Your peace benefits us. Therefore, we're investing in making sure you achieve all three. And if we refuse?" War Prince Krell asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Commander Shin's voice came through the speakers again. "Then we demonstrate why Earth didn't just produce survivors. It produced apex predators." On the display screens, tactical readouts appeared. Detailed analysis of every ship at the conference. Weak points in their shields. Vulnerable systems. Optimal attack vectors. The humans had mapped everything, planned for everything, prepared for everything. "You've been studying us," a delegate said, horrified. "Since the moment we achieved FTL," Hana confirmed. "We knew we'd encounter other species eventually. We wanted to be ready. So we watched, we learned, we prepared. We knew this conference was scheduled decades in advance. We've been planning for this moment for years." Counselor Rin Bei, watching from the human delegation, felt a strange mix of pride and unease. This was strategic thinking on a scale she had never imagined. Humanity hadn't stumbled into this situation. They had orchestrated it, controlled it, dominated it from the very beginning. A new delegate stood. Ambassador Corin of the Helix Federation, a mid-tier power with a reputation for careful neutrality. "What exactly do you want from us?" Admiral Jiwan's answer was simple and direct. "We want you to negotiate a real peace treaty, not the facade you are planning. Real, binding, enforceable agreements. We want mutual defense pacts that actually mean something. We want economic cooperation that makes war unprofitable. And we want all of this guaranteed by mechanisms that prevent any single species from breaking the peace. You want to reshape galactic politics." Corin said, "Yes. And you think you have the power to force this?" Jiwan gestured to the viewing ports, to the fleet beyond. "I think we've demonstrated that clearly enough." Matriarch Selratha made a sound that might have been laughter. "The galaxy is going to tremble." "It already is," Hannah replied. "Now it needs to learn to listen." The first cracks in the resistance appeared when the Helix Federation's ambassador announced they would agree to negotiations under human oversight. Then the Crystalline Dominion, grateful for the warning that saved Selratha's life, added their support. One by one, the smaller powers fell in line. The Vorten Collective and the Armored Hierarchy held out, but they were isolated now. Their conspiracies exposed, their allies abandoning them, their weapons neutralized by human countermeasures. High Chancellor Vexter looked at the tactical displays, at the overwhelming human presence, at the collapse of his carefully laid plans. He was a practical being above all else. "Very well," he said, his voice bitter. "The Vorten Collective will participate in these negotiations." All eyes turned to War Prince Krell. The massive warrior stood silent for a long moment, his clawed hands clenching and unclenching. Finally, he spoke. "The armored hierarchy respects strength above all else. You have proven you possess it. We will negotiate." Admiral Jiwan Park nodded once. "Good, then let's begin again. And this time, let's build something that actually lasts." The galaxy had trembled. Now it would reshape itself around this new reality, whether it wanted to or not. The council chamber had been reorganized. The humans no longer sat in the observer section. Their delegation now occupied a central position in the circular arrangement, whether the other species liked it or not. No one had voted on this change. It had simply happened, and no one felt brave enough to challenge it. Admiral Jiwan Park addressed the assembled delegates with the same calm authority she had shown from the beginning. The Celestial Hall of Accord has been secured. Our teams have removed all unauthorized weapons, disabled all hidden explosives, and detained the Selkoff operatives who infiltrated the station. You are all safe now. Safe under human guard, War Prince Krell muttered. Prisoners in all but name. Captain Minho Quan, standing at attention behind Jiwan, spoke quietly. If you were prisoners, War Prince, you would know the difference. This is protective custody. There are people who wanted you dead to start a war. We've prevented that. You're welcome. General Narration had arrived on the station 6 hours after the crisis began. She commanded 200 human Marines, who now secured every critical section of the facility. They moved with efficiency that made veteran soldiers from species who had waged war for millennia pause and take notice. These weren't peacekeepers playing soldier. These were warriors who had seen real combat, who moved with the confidence of those who knew how to survive when everything went wrong. Their equipment was practical. Their formations were tight. Their eyes were always watching. A Thalasi military observer had attempted to map the human defensive positions. He gave up after an hour. Every time he thought he understood their pattern, he would spot another Marine in a position that shouldn't have been possible to reach. It was like trying to count shadows. The armored hierarchy, proud of their military tradition, decided to test the human guards. War Prince Krell's personal champions, elite soldiers enhanced with the finest combat technology their civilization could produce, attacked a human checkpoint. Without warning Doc, the engagement lasted 4 minutes. Ensign Minji Seo, barely 22 years old by human reckoning, defeated 3 hierarchy champions in single combat. She moved faster than their enhanced vision could track, struck harder than their armored bodies could withstand, and fought with a ferocity that left the survivors shaken. When it was over, Minji helped one of the defeated warriors to his feet. Good fight, she said, breathing only slightly harder than normal. You almost got me with that last move. The hierarchy champion stared at her. His combat enhancements had cost more than most planetary governments spent in a year. His training had begun before this human was even born. Yet she had beaten him and 2 others without visible effort. How? He asked simply. Minji smiled. We're from Earth. It's a death world. Everything there wants to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. We evolved to survive anyway. You trained for war. We trained just to live another day. The term death world spread through the station like wildfire. Most species came from garden worlds where life was relatively easy. Some came from harsh environments that required adaptation. But death worlds were rare, and sentient species from such planets were almost unheard of. Delegates checked their databases. Earth's classification shocked them. Class 12 Death World. Extreme weather variations. Aggressive megafauna. Toxic plant life. Bacterial and viral threats that would overwhelm most species' immune systems. Gravity 0.98 standard, which explained human strength. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere with higher oxygen content than most civilized worlds, which explained their endurance. Humans hadn't just survived Earth. They had conquered it, dominated it, reshaped it to suit their needs. And then they had looked up at the stars and decided that wasn't enough, Ambassador. Junho Lim began individual negotiations with each faction. He was different from the others in the human delegation. Where Jiwan was ice and Hana was steel, Junho was fire. He smiled often, laughed easily, and spoke with a casual confidence that made him seem approachable, but his words were carefully chosen, and his proposals were devastating in their implications. He sat across from High Chancellor Vexter in private quarters. 2 guards stood at the door, 1 human and 1 Vorten. The pretense of equality was maintained even though both knew the truth. "Let's be honest with each other, Chancellor," Junho said, pouring drinks for them both. "Your planet killer was discovered. Your conspiracy was exposed. Your allies have abandoned you. Under normal circumstances, your political career would be over, and your people would be looking at severe consequences." Vexter said nothing, his skin shifting through colors that betrayed his emotional turmoil. "But these aren't normal circumstances," Junho continued. "We're not interested in punishment or revenge. We're interested in stability. The Vorten Collective is a major power with significant influence. We need you at the table, engaged in the peace process, committed to making this work." "So you're offering me a way out," Vexter said carefully. "We're offering everyone a way forward," Junho corrected. "You drop the expansionist policies that led to this crisis. You commit to genuine cooperation with your neighbors. You invest in trade instead of weapons. And in return, humanity helps you transition to a new economic model that's actually more profitable than conquest. And if we refuse?" Junho's smile didn't change, but his eyes grew cold. "We're one species now, Chancellor. Give us 50 years and see how many worlds fly human flags. Give us a century and see how many of your citizens speak our languages, watch our entertainment, adopt our culture, marry our people. Give us 2 centuries and try to remember why you thought numbers mattered." The Chancellor stared at him. "You're talking about cultural conquest. I'm talking about peaceful integration. People choose the societies that offer them the best lives. We make our people's lives very, very good. Can you compete with that?" Similar conversations happened throughout the station. War Prince Krell met with General Narration and discovered that the human commander had read every significant military text in hierarchy history. She could quote their greatest strategists, discuss their famous battles, and point out the tactical errors that had led to their defeats. "You studied us," Krell said, uncertain whether to be honored or horrified. "We studied everyone," Nari replied. "Know your enemy, know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. That's from one of our ancient texts. But the principle applies universally. You consider us enemies? I consider everyone a potential enemy until proven otherwise. Call it paranoia if you like. We call it survival." Dr. Yuna Kim presented her research to a gathering of delegates who requested to understand humanity better. She stood before them with data displays showing thousands of hours of analysis, cultural studies, historical research, and biological assessments. "We've been preparing for first contact since we first confirmed the existence of other intelligent species," she explained. "We didn't know what we would find out here, but we knew we needed to be ready, so we studied everything we could intercept. Your broadcasts, your public records, your literature, your history. We learned your languages before we ever spoke to you." "That's impossible," a delegate protested. "We detected no monitoring, no surveillance, no data theft." "You weren't looking for it," Yuna said simply. "And we're very good at not being seen when we don't want to be." She pulled up comparative analyses. Human learning capacity versus other species. Human adaptation rates. Cultural flexibility. Population growth projections. "We're not the strongest species in the galaxy," she said. "We're not the smartest or the most technologically advanced. But we're the most adaptable. We can survive anywhere, eat almost anything, learn any skill, master any environment. We're generalists in a galaxy of specialists, and that gives us advantages you can't easily counter." A Krellic scientist asked a question that had been bothering many delegates. "Your technology seems inconsistent. Some systems are crude, others are generations ahead of galactic standard. How do you explain that?" Yuna smiled. "We focused our development on what we needed, not what looked impressive. Stealth technology? Critical for species expansion when you don't know who's out there. Intelligence gathering? Essential for survival. Weapons? We made them work well enough. Pretty interfaces and comfortable furniture? We figured we could get those later. You built a civilization focused entirely on pragmatic survival, the scientist said slowly. We built a civilization that assumed the universe was hostile until proven otherwise. So far, we've been proven right. Counselor Rin Bei watched these presentations and negotiations with growing understanding. Humanity hadn't stumbled onto the galactic stage as fortunate primitives. They had prepared, planned, and positioned themselves with careful deliberation. Every action had purpose. Every word had weight. She found herself in a quiet corridor with Dr. Ariam Song, the medical officer who had saved Matriarch Selratha from the explosion. Ariam was checking supplies for the station's medical bay, now under human supervision. "Can I ask you something?" Rin said. Ariam looked up. "Of course. How did you know about the bomb?" "You pulled the Matriarch to safety seconds before it detonated." The timing was impossible. Ariam was quiet for a moment. "Training. We drill for crisis situations constantly. Pattern recognition becomes instinctive. I saw someone place a package near her quarters. The body language was wrong. The timing was suspicious. I reacted in less than a second. On Earth, hesitation means death. We learn not to hesitate." Rin studied the doctor. "You're not soldiers. You're scientists and diplomats and engineers. But you all move like warriors." "Every human is a warrior when they need to be," Ariam said. "That's what coming from a death world means. We don't have the luxury of separating civilian and military mindset. Survival is everyone's job." The negotiations continued for days. Slowly, painstakingly, a new framework emerged. Mutual defense agreements that included verification protocols. Trade deals that made economic cooperation more profitable than conflict. Cultural exchange programs designed to build understanding. Scientific partnerships that would benefit everyone. And overseen by humanity, who had somehow made themselves indispensable in a single week. Matriarch Selratha met privately with Admiral Jiwan. The ancient being moved slowly, her crystalline body reflecting light and patterns that spoke of deep thought. "You've reshaped galactic politics in less than 7 standard cycles," Selratha observed. "Civilizations that have existed for millennia now orbit around a species that achieved spaceflight a mere 52 years ago. How does that feel?" Jiwan considered the question. "Necessary. We didn't want this responsibility, but someone had to take it. Better us than those who would abuse it." "And you won't abuse it?" "We'll try not to. We're human. We make mistakes. But we learn from them, usually after paying terrible prices. Our history is full of warnings about what happens when power goes unchecked. We wrote those warnings in blood." Selratha was silent for a long moment. "I believe you. That's what makes this so remarkable. You're not conquerors pretending to be peacekeepers. You're peacekeepers willing to use a conqueror's methods." "Whatever works," Jiwan said. "We're practical above all else." On the 10th day after humanity's arrival, Ambassador Hana Choi stood before the full council. The peace treaty was ready. Thousands of pages of carefully negotiated terms, agreements, and commitments. It wasn't perfect. Nothing this complex could be, but it was real. "This treaty represents a new beginning," Hana said. "Not because it's elegantly written or politically satisfying, but because it's built on truth. You all know what you were planning. You all know what we prevented. And you all know that pretending otherwise would be stupid." She looked at each delegation in turn. "This treaty works because it assumes you might try to cheat. It includes verification measures because we don't trust you. It has enforcement mechanisms because promises alone are worthless. And it's guaranteed by humanity, who have demonstrated we have the capability and the will to make sure you keep your word. This is not the peace we wanted," High Chancellor Vexter said. No, Hannah agreed. It's the peace you need. The vote was called. One by one, the civilizations agreed. Some with genuine conviction, others with bitter resignation. But all of them voted yes. The treaty was signed in the same chamber where humanity had arrived 10 days earlier. 47 civilizations put their marks on a document that would reshape the galaxy. And humanity, the species that had been dismissed as primitive children, now sat at the center of galactic power. The celestial hall of accord floated in the darkness of space like a jewel. It was massive, larger than most moons, and it sparkled with lights from 1,000 different sources. Inside its grand chamber, representatives from 47 civilizations sat in careful arrangement. Each species had their own section, their own guards, their own pride. For 3 standard cycles, they had talked. They discussed borders between star systems. They argued about trade routes and mining rights. They made promises about peace, though everyone knew some of those promises were lies. But this was how things worked. The powerful species pretended to be civil while they planned their next moves. High Chancellor Vexter of the Vorten Collective was pleased with himself. His people controlled 200 star systems, and after this conference, they would control more. The other species thought they were negotiating, but Vexter was simply waiting. Everything was going according to plan. Matriarch Salratha of the Crystalline Dominion watched the proceedings with ancient eyes. She had lived for 3,000 years and seen 7 of these conferences. She knew what was coming. She could feel it in the way certain delegates looked at each other, in the weapons hidden beneath diplomatic robes, in the ships that waited just beyond the neutral zone. War Prince Krell of the Armored Hierarchy cared nothing for talk. His species believed in strength and conquest. He attended these conferences because his elders commanded it, but he would much prefer to settle disputes with battle. His clawed hand rested on the ceremonial weapon at his side, and he dreamed of the day he could use it. Then the message arrived. A species called humanity requested entrance to the conference. They wanted to participate in the peace talks. That the chamber erupted in noise. Laughter, mostly. Some confusion. A few delegates didn't even know who humans were. Vexter checked his datapad, humans, from a star system in the outer rim. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 52 years ago. They controlled exactly 7 colony worlds. Their population was merely 18 billion across all their settlements. Their technology was generations behind the galactic standard. This is absurd, Vexter announced to the chamber. Why would we allow primitives to participate in matters beyond their understanding? Several delegates agreed loudly. The humans were nothing. They were children playing with technology they barely understood. Their presence would be an insult to the gathered powers. But Matriarch Salratha raised one crystalline hand. The chamber fell silent. When she spoke, her voice resonated like wind through canyons. I suggest we hear what they have to say. Vexter stared at her. Why would we waste our time? Because my people have observed them, Salratha said quietly. And what we have seen is ... interesting. After much debate and several votes, the council agreed. The humans would be allowed 15 minutes to present their case. Then they would be politely dismissed, and the real work would continue. The doors to the chamber opened. Admiral Jiwan Park entered first. She was smaller than most species in the room, standing barely 2 meters tall. Her uniform was simple, dark blue with minimal decoration. Her face showed no expression as she walked down the center aisle. Behind her came Ambassador Hana Choi, a woman with sharp eyes that seemed to count every delegate, every guard, every exit. Captain Minho Kwan followed, moving with the efficient grace of a trained soldier. Dr. Unikim walked last, carrying a data case. Something changed in the room. Several delegates felt it, but couldn't name it. The temperature seemed to drop, though the environmental systems showed no change. The humans moved with purpose, with confidence that seemed wrong for such a young species. War Prince Krell laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Look at them. So small, so fragile. Why do children interrupt the gathering of their betters? Jiwan stopped at the center of the chamber. She looked up at Krell without fear, without anger, with nothing but cold calculation in her eyes. We are here, she said in a voice that carried to every corner of the vast hall, to ensure you don't repeat the mistakes that ended your last peace conference. The laughter stopped. The silence that followed was complete. No delegate moved. No one spoke, because Jiwan had mentioned something that was never discussed. The cataclysm of the Ninth Conference. 3,000 years ago, 4 civilizations had been completely destroyed. 12 more had been crippled for centuries. Billions had died. Entire star systems had been burned to lifeless rock. No one talked about it. It was the great shame of galactic history. But this human, this representative of a species that didn't even exist when it happened, had spoken of it as casually as discussing the weather. Vexther recovered first. You know nothing of our history. You are infants in the galactic community. We know more than you think, Ambassador Hana Choi said. Her voice was polite but firm. We know that 3 civilizations at this conference have brought weapons disguised as cultural artifacts. We know that 2 more have hidden assassination teams on this station. We know that this peace conference was never meant to succeed. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted denials. Others demanded proof. Security forces tensed, hands moving toward weapons. The carefully maintained civility shattered in seconds. Captain Minho Kwan didn't react to the chaos. He stood perfectly still, his eyes tracking every threat, calculating every possibility. Dr. Yuna Kim opened her data case and began uploading files to the chamber's main display system. These are serious accusations, Matriarch Selrotha said, her voice cutting through the noise. Do you have evidence? We do, Jiwan replied. But first, we need to discuss why we're really here. You have 13 minutes remaining, Vexther said coldly. Speak quickly, human. Jiwan smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We came to this conference because we detected unusual military movements near our space. Fleets gathering, resources being stockpiled, communication networks activating. All the signs of preparation for a major war. The galaxy's conflicts are none of your concern, Krell growled. They are when that war will spread to our colonies, Hana replied. When trade routes collapse. When refugee ships flee into our territory. When the chaos reaches our worlds and threatens our people. You think you can contain the galactic war? Your history says otherwise. Jiwan walked slowly around the chamber's center, her footsteps echoing. So we investigated. We sent scouts to watch. We intercepted communications. We analyzed shipping manifests and traced financial transactions. And we discovered something fascinating. She stopped and looked up at the gathered delegates. This conference is a trap. Multiple factions plan to use it as the spark to ignite a war. Some of you know this. Some of you are part of it. And the rest of you are going to be victims. Lies. Someone shouted, Prove it. Another demanded. G1 nodded to Yuna. The scientist activated the display. Images appeared above the chamber, rotating slowly. Weapon scans. Recorded conversations. Shipping records. Battle plans. The evidence was detailed, specific, and damning. The delegates stared in shock. Some recognized their own ships in the scans. Others saw their secret communications displayed for all to see. The conspiracy was exposed in painful detail. How did you obtain this? Vexther demanded, his voice shaking with rage or fear or both. Our security is absolute. Our encryption is unbreakable. Your technology is primitive. Is it? Hana asked softly. Minho spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but clear. You assumed we were weak because we're new. You assumed we were ignorant because we asked questions. You assumed we were primitive because our ships looked different from yours. He paused. These were mistakes. Matriarch Salrotha leaned forward, her ancient eyes fixed on the humans. What do you want? Jiwan's answer was simple. We want you to make real peace. Not the false peace you've been negotiating. Not the temporary truce you plan to break. Real, lasting, genuine peace. And if we refuse? Krell asked, his hand now openly on his weapon. The temperature in the chamber dropped another degree. Jiwan met the War Prince's eyes without blinking. Then you'll discover why humanity doesn't lose wars. Outside the viewing ports, a new ship appeared. Then another. And another. Human vessels, dozens of them, materializing from nowhere. They surrounded the station in a perfect formation. Weapons ports opening, power signatures flaring to life. The delegates realized, in that terrible moment, that the humans hadn't sent a diplomatic mission. They had sent the fleet. And they had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Admiral Jiwan Park stood in the center of the celestial hall of Accord, representing a species the galaxy had dismissed as irrelevant. Her next words would echo across the stars for generations. Let's begin again, she said. And this time, let's be honest with each other. The galaxy had trembled. Now it would learn to listen. 3 weeks after humanity's arrival at the celestial hall of Accord, the conference chamber looked different. The defensive barriers had been removed. The weapon scanners had been deactivated. The human marines who had secured every corridor now stood down, returning to their ships. The atmosphere had shifted from tense confrontation to cautious cooperation. But everyone knew the truth. The galaxy had changed forever. The final session of the conference convened on a morning that felt almost normal. Delegates gathered in their assigned sections. Their staff members prepared documents, and the ceremonial elements of galactic diplomacy resumed. But the seating arrangement told a different story. Humanity occupied a central position now, equal to the most ancient and powerful civilizations present. Matriarch Salrotha stood to address the assembly. Her crystalline form caught the light as she moved, creating patterns that seemed to flow across the chamber walls. I have lived for 3,000 years, she began, her voice resonating with age and authority. I have witnessed 7 peace conferences. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have watched as we made the same mistakes over and over, convinced each time that this cycle would be different. She paused, her ancient eyes scanning the gathered delegates. For the first time in my very long life, I believe we might actually succeed. Not because we are wiser than our ancestors, not because we have learned from history, but because we finally have someone willing to force us to be better than we want to be. She turned to the human delegation. I propose that humanity be granted a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and authority equal to the founding members. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some delegates shouted their support immediately. Others hesitated, uncertain about granting such power to newcomers. But the momentum was clear. War Prince Krell stood, his massive form drawing all attention. The warrior who had tried to attack the humans now spoke in their favor, and his words carried weight among the more militant civilizations. The armored hierarchy respects strength above all else, he said, his voice like grinding stone. Humanity has proven they possess it. They defeated our champions. They penetrated our defenses. They outmaneuvered our strategies. In any other circumstance, we would consider them enemies to be destroyed. He looked at Admiral Jiwan, and something like respect showed in his eyes. But they also showed wisdom. They could have destroyed us. They had the power, the position, the justification. We had plotted against this conference. We had brought weapons. We had planned violence. Yet they chose to offer us peace instead of punishment. That is the mark of true warriors. Strength tempered by wisdom. Power controlled by purpose. He raised his clawed hand in formal salute. The armored hierarchy votes in favor. One by one, the civilizations voted. The Crystalline Dominion. The Helix Federation. The Fallacy Confederation. Even the smaller powers who had remained neutral throughout the crisis added their voices. When the count was complete, only 3 civilizations had voted against. The measure passed overwhelmingly. Humanity was now a permanent member of the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Vexther, who had led the conspiracy against the peace conference, stood to speak. His political position was weakened, but not destroyed. The Vorten Collective still controlled 200 star systems and commanded significant resources. His words mattered. The Vorten Collective accepts this decision, he said, each word clearly costing him something. We also accept the terms of the peace treaty. Our expansionist policies are ended. Our hidden weapons have been dismantled under human supervision. Our military forces are being restructured for defense rather than conquest. He looked directly at Ambassador Hana Choi. You were right when you said this was not the peace we wanted. But perhaps you were also right when you said it was the peace we needed. The treaty itself was unlike anything in galactic history. It included provisions that previous peace agreements had never dared to include. Mandatory arbitration for disputes. Economic integration that made war financially devastating for all parties. Cultural exchange programs designed to build genuine understanding between species. Scientific cooperation agreements that encourage shared research and development. But the real innovation was in the verification measures. Every signatory agreed to allow inspection teams on their worlds. Military buildups would be monitored. Weapons development would be transparent. Trade agreements would be audited to prevent economic manipulation, and humanity would oversee it all. This requires trust. A delegate observed during the final debate on the treaty terms. No, Ambassador Jun-Ho Lim replied. It requires verification. Trust is what you have when verification becomes unnecessary. We're not there yet. Maybe we'll get there eventually. But right now, we verify everything. Dr. Yuna Kim presented the final details of the cultural exchange programs. Every civilization would host human observers, and humanity would host observers from every other species. Students would study on foreign worlds. Scientists would collaborate across species lines. Artists and musicians and writers would share their works across the galaxy. Culture is how you prevent war, Yuna explained. When your children grow up with friends from other species, when you watch entertainment that shows other perspectives, when you eat food from other worlds and wear clothes from other traditions, it becomes harder to see those people as enemies. Not impossible, but harder. And we'll take every advantage we can get. A Krulix delegate raised a concern. This sounds like cultural imperialism. Humanity spreading their influence through soft power. It is, Yuna agreed cheerfully. And you're welcome to do the same to us. Send your teachers to our schools. Share your music and your stories. Teach our children your languages. If your culture is stronger, it will spread. If ours is stronger, it will spread. Either way, we'll all understand each other better. The delegate looked uncomfortable, but didn't argue further. On the human flagship Indomitable Will, Commander Hinwoo Shin stood on the bridge, watching the alien ships prepare to depart. His tactical officer approached with a final report. All threats neutralized, Commander. The planet killer has been dismantled. The biological weapons have been destroyed under controlled conditions. The Selkoth assassins are in custody and being transferred to their government for prosecution. The station is secure. What about the hidden agendas we haven't uncovered yet? Shin asked. The officer smiled slightly. Still working on those, sir. But we've established monitoring protocols. If anyone starts planning something new, we'll know about it. Shin nodded. Good. Stay sharp. This treaty is just paper until people decide to honor it. Our job is to make sure they keep deciding that way. In her private quarters, Counselor Rin Bei wrote her final report on the conference. She had been tasked with documenting humanity's role, and what she had witnessed still seemed impossible. 3 weeks ago, they had been unknowns. Now they sat at the center of galactic power. She tried to find the right words to explain it. It wasn't just military strength, though they had demonstrated that. It wasn't just intelligence capabilities, though those were staggering. It wasn't just cultural confidence or diplomatic skill or technological innovation. It was all of those things combined with something else. A kind of relentless determination. A refusal to accept failure. A willingness to do whatever was necessary to achieve their goals. Humans didn't fight fair. They fought to win, and they had won. Admiral Jiwon Park stood before the assembly one final time. The ceremonial closing of the conference was about to begin, but she had asked to speak first. The delegates granted her request without debate. No one denied humanity anything these days. We came to this conference uninvited, Jiwon said. We forced our way in. We threatened you with weapons you didn't know we had. We exposed your secrets and your plans. We took control of this station and dictated terms. By any reasonable measure, we acted like conquerors. She let that truth hang in the air. But we're not conquerors. We're survivors. And we know something that many of you seem to have forgotten. Peace isn't a natural state. It's something you have to build, maintain, and defend every single day. It's hard work. It's frustrating. It requires compromise and sacrifice and constant vigilance. War is easy by comparison. Just stop trying. Jiwon looked at each delegation, her eyes hard but not unkind. We've read your histories. We know what happened 3,000 years ago. We know about the cataclysm of the 9th Conference. 4 civilizations completely destroyed. 12 more crippled for centuries. Billions dead. Entire star systems burned to lifeless rock. All because peace seemed too difficult and war seemed easier. She paused. We refuse to let that happen again. Not because we're noble saviors sent to rescue you from yourselves, but because next time, humanity might be among the casualties. We're practical people. We protect our interests, and our interests require a stable, peaceful galaxy. So you're forcing peace on us for selfish reasons? Someone asked. Yes, Jiwon said simply. Does the motivation matter if the result is the same? You get to live. Your civilizations survive. Your children grow up in a galaxy that isn't burning. And all we ask in return is that you honor agreements you should have been honoring all along. Matriarch Sel Rotha made that sound that might have been laughter. Aggressively altruistic, enlightened self-interest. I believe that's the most human thing I've ever heard. Jiwon smiled slightly. We're a contradictory species. We contain multitudes. The closing ceremony was traditional, following protocols that were thousands of years old. Each delegation presented formal statements. Documents were sealed with ancient methods alongside modern digital signatures. Ceremonial gifts were exchanged. The whole thing took hours. But underneath the ceremony, real change was happening. Trade agreements were being finalized. Military liaisons were being assigned. Cultural exchange coordinators were scheduling their first meetings. The machinery of peace was starting to turn as the delegates prepared to depart. Several approached the human delegation privately. Every major civilization requested formal diplomatic relations with Earth, not because they wanted to, but because they needed to. The newcomers had made themselves indispensable in 3 weeks. Dr. Arium Song and Ensign Minji Seo stood at an observation deck, watching the alien vessels begin their departure. The station would remain as a permanent diplomatic facility, with rotating staff from all member civilizations. Humans would be there too, of course. Always watching. Always verifying. Do you think they'll keep the peace? Minji asked. Arium considered the question. Some will. Some won't. But we'll catch the ones who try to cheat, and we'll stop them before it spreads. That's all we can do. Build the systems, enforce the rules, and hope that eventually trust replaces verification. That could take centuries. Probably. But we're patient. We're very, very patient. The human fleet prepared for the journey home. Ships fell into formation with the practiced ease of crews who had trained together for years. They had come to the conference ready for war, but hoping for peace. They had achieved peace through the threat of war. It was a very human solution. Admiral Jiwan recorded her final log entry, knowing it would become part of the historical record. First contact protocols, successful. Peace conference, concluded. Treaty, signed and ratified. Galactic stability, established. Human position, secured. The mission was to prevent a war. We accomplished that objective. But our real mission